What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got another edition of TV Talk, where I examine recently released TV series and I talk about their effect and their impact on the world, whether they are worth watching or worth skipping. And today I've got basically a review of an entire series. This one is near and dear to my heart because it is a reboot, remake. I call it a sequel. Some places call them reboots. I would say it's a sequel to a classic show I grew up on, ladies and gentlemen, Full House. And this one I wanted to examine, obviously, for today's TV talk, is the recently finished Netflix series Fuller House, where the girls in the Full House house grow up and move back into their old home, and they have families of their own. So it continues the progression of DJ, Stephanie, and Kimmy from the original Full House series, and kind of builds upon their lives and kind of recreates moments and things from the past series and tells their story as adults. This show just finished up its fifth and final season on Netflix. It ran Netflix exclusively. I think DVDs are in stores now, so you guys can get those if you don't have Netflix. But Netflix ran 5 seasons of this show, and the series finale just aired like 4 or 5 days ago. So I will save the spoiler talk for the end of the video. There will be non-spoilers for this video, so don't worry about being spoiled if you have not seen the last season yet. I will save spoiler stuff possibly for the end of the video, and I will give you guys a warning. But I just kind of wanted to do a general quick examination of the show and why I love it so much. The show ran from 2016 to 2020, 5 seasons in total, 66 episodes. And it did run over the course of 5 years. They would put like 9 episodes at a time on, and then finish the season with 9 more episodes later on. So it would run in like 9-episode increments throughout the course of the 5-year span. But it seems like it ended too quickly, since there wasn't conventional TV seasons where you watch 1 episode a week for 24 weeks. You pretty much would just like watch all 9 episodes in one sitting. So within 1 or 2 days, the season's over, and you're waiting for the next dump of episodes. So the season felt very, very fast. This series, even though it did last 5 years, felt quick because nowadays with streaming, everything is binge-watched. You don't have like I said, the once-a-week thing. So, for those of you guys that know about Full House, it was a ABC teen comedy, or teenage kind of younger family comedy that ran for like 8 or 9 seasons on ABC back in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was the wholesome, 3 dads raised 3 little girls kind of comedy, and this builds on the lore of that. So, first of all, we have the characters. I think this show overall was a big success. I like the way it progressed. It obviously wasn't played as straight kind of as the original show was. The comedy was a little more over the top. It was a little more zany. It was less about creating real family problems and solutions in a heartfelt way, and it was more about kind of over-the-top characters and stuff like that. But it did update the current societal way of things in a realistic way, so I did enjoy that. They had a lot of callbacks to the originals. Pretty much everybody, all the main cast, and a lot of the old characters came back as well, but a lot of the main cast was involved in this, except for Michelle. And Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen did not come back and reprise their role as Michelle. And the rest of the cast let them hear about it at least once per season. They would take a little shot at the fact that Mary-Kate and Ashley didn't want to come back for this. But aside from them, everyone else made their appearances, including a lot of background characters. But we saw basically throughout the first couple seasons of the show, it was centered around kind of the main storyline was DJ's love life. Basically, the premise of the series was that DJ, Stephanie, and Kimmy move into Danny's old house, the same house in the original film, or series, I'm sorry, and they would kind of mimic the characters that happened in the original one. So DJ was a lot like Danny, the organizational kind of OCD clean freak. Stephanie kind of was the Uncle Jesse, where she didn't have any kids at first. She was kind of the cool aunt that kind of just wanted to drink and party and not settle down and travel the world, much like Jesse. And Kimmy was kind of the goofy, over-the-top, kind of knucklehead Joey character, where she was kind of the crazy one. So we saw these new characters kind of mimic the roles of the past characters. And the main storyline was DJ, who's now a veterinarian, hooking up with her co-worker Matt, who's also a veterinarian with her. And Then we saw Steve Hale from the original series, who was DJ's longtime boyfriend, her most important love in the original Full House, come back and kind of still be in love kind of with DJ as DJ's husband dies when the series starts, much like Danny's wife died when the original Full House started. So again, a lot of parallels here, but it was done in such a way that was a little ham-fisted, but it wasn't like overtly silly. But we saw kind of DJ having to choose between her new love, who was right for her in her adult life, or her old love, Steve, who she reconnected with in the series. So the love triangle was a big part of that. Throughout the series, and again, I know I'm giving spoilers from earlier seasons, but you guys should have probably seen the original ones by now. We saw Stephanie kind of change from, and again, the characters over this 5-season arc progressed a lot. We saw DJ wind up picking her love. Those of you guys by now know that she chose Steve in, I think, season 4. So she winds up reuniting with her old love, which makes the original fans of the show happy. Steve is now a podiatrist working on people's feet. Steph has a big character arc. She goes from the wild child Uncle Jesse character to kind of settling down and kind of getting into the mom life. She winds up falling in love with Kimmy's brother, Jimmy Gibbler, who's a really over-the-top airhead. And I don't know if I love the choice of Stephanie falling for another Kimmy Gibbler kind of character, because you already have one of those, so for her to fall for kind of a very silly one was kind of a weird choice. But they did kind of fit together nicely in some ways, and it made for a nice way for Steph to settle down and eventually get involved in, I think in season 4, she's going through the child thing where she can't initially have kids and then get some breakthroughs, for those of you guys that haven't seen that. So she goes from being this single wild child to settling down with a guy and having situations with children that come into play later. Then Kimmy and Fernando. Kimmy moves in with them, and she had just been divorced from this guy named Fernando, who's another over-the-top silly character. So there are reliances on too many dumb Kelly Bundy-style characters that are just wild here. But Kimmy and Fernando start off being divorced. They try and get remarried. They don't get remarried. They try again later on. So they kind of are on again, off again, but they're always together. And they're both kind of wild and zany, which kind of makes them fit together because they love each other throughout the craziness. DJ has 3 children in this show. Jackson, the oldest. Max, so Jackson's kind of the teenage guy who loves girls, he loves sports. He's kind of one of those typical teenage guys who does the DJ thing. Max is the overly intelligent, too smart for his age, kind of classy, kind of hipster child, even though he's super young. He's a really good standout character in this. And then the youngest child, Tommy Jr., is played by twins, just like Becky and Jesse's kids were played by twins later on, and Michelle was played by twins. So really cool to have the youngest child played by twins. So DJ had her 3 kids just like Danny did. Kimmy's got a kid as well, Ramona, who's a star in this as well. She winds up morphing a lot. She initially is kind of your standard girly teenager who gets into stuff with like boys and stuff like that and music. And she winds up doing some singing on the show, a lot of dancing on the show. Very good dancer who's showing off her talents there. She winds up doing a lot of like activism and like feminism. She becomes kind of this feminist women's empowerment character where she stands for a lot of women. She morphs very quickly into a very strong woman who does a lot of things ahead of her age group, I guess. She becomes very progressive and stuff. And I like the use of social media in here. Some of the jokes are a little more updated because they're Netflix and not ABC. They do a lot of like teenage stuff with like not wanting to connect with their parents and being on their phones too much and their computers and social media and dating sites, and they update a lot of the humor. And again, not all of it lands. Some of the stuff's too over the top, but most of it is pretty well updated and has a little edge to it. Something else I liked is even after Matt was not chosen for DJ, he stayed around in the show and wound up being with Gia. They brought back Gia as one of the, starting as kind of a background character and becoming a more frequent character. The one who made Stephanie smoke in the bathroom, or tried to make Stephanie smoke in the bathroom back in the day, she is in this. And she kind of grows up to be kind of how Stephanie started. She winds up being this wild child, kind of rebellious adult, just like she was as a teenager. And she has a daughter, Rocky, who winds up being involved with Jackson, who essentially kind of toward the end of the series ends up with Jackson. And so you've got kind of a new Gia with DJ and Steph's kid. We see a lot of cool cameos in this. We see, there's so many. We see Vicky, which is great because Vicky and Danny were always a thing. We see Dwayne makes an appearance. The whatever guy that was dating Kimmy, he's in there. Harry, Stephanie's childhood best friend, is in there. So many cool appearances. I just really enjoy all the callbacks. They clearly make jokes about it being a series. They make jokes about all the old stuff that happened. Michelle falling off the horse. Just stuff like that. It's a really fun mix too, because not only is it the older characters, you see Danny and Jesse and Becky and and Joey, they all come back, but you also get a lot of the current characters like your DJ, Stephanie, and Kimmy, and you also get a lot of the stuff with their children. So they give you updates on the old characters, the current characters, and the new characters, and they all kind of make progression. So it's good storytelling. And like I said, it's not a perfect show. Some of the humor misses, some of the plots are a little too out there, some of the characters, there's kind of too many goofball characters, but all in all, it stays pretty true to the original. A little less wholesome, but a little more updated for the modern world, and I like where a lot of the characters start and end up. I don't want to give spoilers again to the last season. I liked how the last season ended, but then a couple little twists at the end were kind of just thrown in there and seemed like a little too much. But again, it's Full House, so things are always kind of supposed to end happy and be a little perfectly pat. The endings are kind of perfectly pronounced, which is kind of true to the Full House format. So while I didn't love all the choices of the end of the series, I did like how they stayed true to the series. So all in all, if you like the original Full House, I think you'll like this one. It's not exactly the same series, but it is a close enough update that brings back a lot of the nostalgia and the jokes and the characters that you'll remember from the 80s. So I would recommend this. If you got Netflix, like I said, there's 66 total episodes over 5 seasons. All the episodes range from like 27 to 33 minutes per episode, so you get a half-hour episode. They're pretty fast. I would tend to binge a season in 1 or 2 days, so if you got the time, check these out, see if you like them. They're not going to be for everyone. Some of the original fans aren't going to like some of the new humor, but I think a lot of you guys will. So I would give this series 7 out of 10. Not perfect, but pretty solid, and pretty happy to see how these characters progress. I love sequels like this. I love Girl Meets World. I talked about that on this channel as well, so go back to a previous TV talk where I discussed the impact of Girl Meets World. I like this one. I love them taking older series and re-updating them. They did that with Are You Afraid of the Dark earlier this year or last year. That was very good. So I think they should keep doing more of this stuff because you're cashing in on the old nostalgia and you're using the name value like people like to do. But instead of making a remake or just making a tired old thing, you're making a sequel where you're updating the futures of the characters and you're giving fan service to the old fans by letting us know what's happening to the characters we grew up loving and remembering. Full House was a big part of my childhood. I grew up watching it a lot. I watched the originals toward the end of the series when I was old enough to watch, from age 7 on, and then I watched them in reruns in perpetuity for years and years and years and years. So I think it's still on in reruns in certain places. So I can recall every day watching reruns. It's literally a show I've seen every episode of, and now I can say, a solid 20 years later, I've seen every episode of Fuller House, the sequel to the original that has a lot of callbacks. So what do you guys think of Full House? And those of you who have never seen Fuller House, what do you think of that? Do you like these reboots? Well, they call them reboots. Do you like these sequels? Do you like building on these characters? Or should they be left in the past to make room for new, different, creative things? Do you think it's kind of lazy of them? Do you think they progress the characters in a positive way? Or did you think they progressed them negatively? Tell me in the comments below what you guys think of this show. And tell me what other shows you would like me to talk about in depth here on TV Talk. Stay safe, my friends. Social distancing. Take care of yourselves. Love yourselves and each other. I will see you soon.